Once upon a time, there was a peasant called Hiri who lived happily alone. He had his own land, his own food and his own company. And if he got lonely, he sang himself a song. Life was hard, but he did not starve and he was happy. Until one day, a rich man who lived in a manor house nearby came and knocked on his door. "Hiri Glibovich," said the rich man, smiling like a jewel. "The time has come to pay your family debt." Hiri did not understand. What family debt? Neither my father nor my mother ever mentioned such a thing. The rich man let out a noise of surprise. "But Hiri, how can it be? For the story of your family's debt has passed down through my house for generations." "What shame," he said, shaking his head. "Not only did your forefather shirk his duty of payment, but your father shirked his duty of telling you of it." "My forefathers were good men," said Hiri. "Now, if you don't mind, my goat needs to be fed." He tried to close the door, but the rich man caught it with his foot. Suddenly, his eyebrows lowered, and his eyes shone darkly. "Hiri Glibovich," he said coolly, "I must remind you that you are in my debt." Hiri saw now that there were some men behind the rich man, holding large bats. They were thick men who had grown on milk and meat every day. Hiri let go of the door. He did not even know this man's name. "You see, your forefather, 7 generations ago, stole an apple from my tree. Now, my forefather was a generous man, so he made an offer, if the thief worked in his fields for 3 weeks. Then he would forget anything had ever happened. The man refused, and so my forefather made a different offer. The thief could be in debt to him. This was a very expensive apple, the kind that is used to make the finest wine. I should add. Your forefather agreed. And so the debt has been passed down from generation to generation, collecting interest every year. I must admit, I am quite surprised you had not heard of it. I thought your family's huge debt would be common news in the area around here." Of course, the rich man did not tell him the truth, that Hiri's ancestor had been starving, that the master of the manor house had offered him an apple, and then asked for payment afterwards, and that, when he had proposed the debt to him, the poor farmer had said, "Write down whatever you like, but I will never pay for that apple." Hiri gulped, as if he could taste the apple on his tongue. "How much interest has collected?" he said quietly. The rich man casually said the number and Hiri felt his stomach tighten, like a starving man who has just found his goat killed. "Naturally, I am not a cruel man," said the master of the manor house. "I will make the same offer to you as my forefather did to yours. You may come and work off the debt, based on the interest that will be 3 years of work." Hiri's heart sank. But what could he do? He had not a single coin to pay the man with. And if he died without paying the debt, it might go to the other people in the village. He sighed. "I agree to your deal." "Good." The rich man clicked his fingers. The master's men came in and quickly carried Hiri out of the building. He didn't even have time to say goodbye to his goat before he was carried to the manor house. For the next 3 years, Hiri worked hard, never shirking his duty or showing up late to work. He made the rich man a lot of money. And when the 3 years were coming to their end, the rich man thought, "I can't lose this man. Unlike the other peasants, he works like his life depends on it. And I suppose it does. How can I keep him here longer?" The next day, the master came to Hiri and said, "Hiri Glibovich, I have a new task for you. Take these hares and graze them for me, so that they go fat and delicious. But if you lose them, You will be in serious trouble. Hiri was tired from his years of work. So all he could do was nod and take the hares. But when he took them to the field to graze, the hares ran away, disappearing like water pouring through his hands. Oh no, he cried. I have lost the master's hares. I'm sure he chose those hares because he knew they would run away. And he'll want to keep me working here longer. Arg, I would rather starve. Just then, an old man came wandering through the field, carrying a pack on his back. He was blind, so Hiri said hello to him. And the old man asked him why he sounded so sad. When Hiri explained his situation, the old man took a beautiful instrument out of his pack. This is a magic lira, he explained. Play it and see what happens. So the peasant sat on a rock and tried to play the instrument. He had never held a musical instrument before, and it took him a long time to figure it out. He almost gave up, but when he finally produced a sound, it was beautiful. Like a stream running through a clear valley. And the hares immediately ran back to him. Oh, thank you, cried Hiri. But the old man was gone. When the peasant returned to the manor, the master counted up his hares and was shocked to find all 10 of them there. The next day, he sent Hiri out again, but asked his wife to go after him, wear a disguise and find out how he is keeping those hares so close. So the wife dressed herself up in common clothes. Usually, she wore fine silks and heavy makeup. So just by wearing normal clothes, she looked like a completely different person. She found Hiri sitting on a rock, singing to himself. Peasant, she said, and then remembered that she was disguised as a common woman. I mean, young man. What are you doing here? I am grazing my hares, he replied, looking at her strangely. Well? Where are they? So Hiri pulled out his lira and played it. And all the hares came running to him. They danced around his feet, and he stroked one of their heads. Impressive, said the woman. For a handsome young man like you. Handsome? Thank you. Hiri tried to return to his playing. But the woman said, I would like to buy one. Sorry. They're not for sale. I'll pay 100 rubles, she said, pulling a bag of gold out of her pocket. Hiri looked at her for a while, as if he was considering it, and then said, No. I won't sell to you. Please, I'll pay anything, she said, taking his arm. It was much thicker than she expected, not with fat, but with muscle. Hiri sighed. Well, I suppose I might sell one of them. But only to someone who kissed me. And that's on top of the 100 rubles. Done, said the woman, and before he could realize what was happening, she had grabbed his cheeks and kissed him. Then she dropped the bag of money on the ground, picked up a hare and ran away. Miss, wait, cried Hiri. Don't hold the hare so tight. You'll strangle him. So she held the hare gently. It sat calmly in her arms. Until suddenly, just when she was reaching the manor house, it jumped out of her hands and ran away. What she didn't know was that Hiri had waited and played his music to call the hare back to him. The wife explained to her husband what had happened, although she didn't mention the kiss. And the next day he sent her out again, this time disguised as a man. She wore a mustache made of goat's hair, but it looked ridiculous. And she tried to do a low, strong voice and ended up coughing. My price is the same as yesterday, miss, said Hiri, clearly seeing it was her. If you want to take my hare away from his grazing, you'll have to feed me a kiss. And 100 rubles, of course. So once again, the woman kissed him. And this time they kissed for quite a while. Although the goat's hair mustache made it very uncomfortable. Hiri warned her about holding the hair too tight. Because they were such easy creatures to strangle. And once again he called the hair back with his magic lira when she was halfway home. The woman wasn't thinking very clearly about what she was doing. So far, it was just a lot of fun. And she thought her stupid husband would keep sending her out. Day after day, to buy hairs from the peasant. But she underestimated his love of money and cheap workers. So the next day, the master himself went to the field. Disguised as a woman. His disguise was even worse than his wife's. But Hiri acted as if he were a charming young lady. "They are such beautiful animals, aren't they?" said Hiri, picking up a hare and showing its long, soft ears. "My master gave them to me to graze, and I have been looking after them so carefully." "Yes, yes," said the master. "How wonderful. I would like to own one myself. Now, how much do I have to pay you to buy one?" "The price is 100 rubles. But there's something you must do first before I will sell to you. I ask it of everyone, you see. Every time." "And what is that, young man?" "Oh, I don't think you'd be interested. You're too pretty to be interested in a poor peasant like me." The master smiled sweetly. "Absolutely not. You're so handsome." "All right, then," said Hiri, smiling. "You have to kiss me." The master froze as he realized what the man was saying. He made a strangled noise and jumped so high in the air that his ridiculous disguise fell off. Then he ran back to the manor house shouting, "Wife! Wife! What have you been up to?" Hiri laughed until his sides were sore, and then he said, "Come on, my hares. We're not needed here anymore." It was the last day of Hiri's contract. And he was free to go. His debt had been paid, interest and all. So he took the 200 rubles he had won from the master's wife and went traveling. In every town he went to, the people thought he was just another poor, uneducated peasant, but when he played his lira and the hares came to dance around him, they all clapped and gave him money. Soon, his name spread through the land. And people saw him coming and cried, "Look, it's the rabbit man." When the hares realized this, they were not happy. And they bit anyone who called them rabbits and not hares. But the rabbit man sounded better than the hare man. So people continued to make the mistake. And soon half of Ukraine had felt the angry bites of Hiri's hares.